Hi, I'm Eric Kelly from KellyPlanet.com. This is a closer look at Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 4, Episode 10, The Loss.
It's been 5 months since Mark's accident. I haven't missed a single hour of my duties. Somebody else might have given in, but I didn't.
We start off in a therapy session. Yay. That lady is Janet Brooks, played by Kim Braden, who would also play Picard's Nexus wife in Generations. Anyway, she's super proud of how she's handling the death of her husband, but Troy's like, no, I don't think you're dealing with it at all. Loss causes great pain, and, you should be feeling that. Oh, and by the way, I happen to have your husband's music box. Okay, and she cries. Now we're on the bridge, and Worf is detecting something, but nope, now it's gone, and that's because we have to get back to Troy, because this is her episode.
I promise I'll come by and see you tomorrow. Deanna, are you all right? What? You faded out there for a second. Oh, no, I'm fine. I'm just very tired, that's all.
Janet says, see you tomorrow, and it looks like Troy really isn't fine. Data is detecting something again, and again it's gone. Worf says, well, it's not a ghost, so Picard orders a full stop. And Troy passes out. That's not good.
Sensor diagnostics have been completed and indicate that all systems are normal. There remains no explanation for the images which appeared in our path.
Time to get on with it. Data says at Warp 6 it will take them 6 days to get where they're going. Okay. Engage. Uh-oh. Geordi says their warp field collapsed right away. Back to all stop. That's Ensign Alan B. We saw her in the last episode. She says that something is pulling the Enterprise forward. Troy's awake, but she has a migraine and calls the dock, and Bev says, go lie down, I'll be there in a bit. On the bridge, they're trying to turn the ship around, but it's not working. So they shut off the engines and are still being pulled. Bev stops by to see Troy and wants to take her back to sickbay, but Riker chimes in and calls him to a meeting. Riker says, well, maybe a tractor beam is pulling us, but Data says there's no ship out there. Then Worf says, yeah, I don't know, and Geordi says the same thing. Picard thinks, hey, let's ask Troy, and she says, I'm not sensing anything. And if we're honest, it's rare that she actually senses something useful. And then Data points out, well, you can't sense the brain or the Ferengi.
You don't understand. I don't sense anything. Not out there, not in here. All of you, you're all blank to me.
Whoa. Doc Crusher says, well, I can tell you have brain damage, and there's totally unresponsive cells in there. Troy's attitude here is that she will eventually be fine, that all this is just temporary. But Bev's a bit more reasonable and says, or you may have to live with this the rest of your life. For now, Troy just wants to get back to work. So she does, and Riker stops by to see how she's doing because he's a nice guy. But she gets all defensive and says how she sees how people treat her patients differently when they have a disability.
I'm sorry if
I will not be treated that way.
Hey.
I'm fine. If I get better, I get better. If I don't, I'll adapt. Life goes on.
Data and Geordi have a probe out there now to see what's up. They get nothing at first, but Data applies a virtual particle trajectories filter. Okay. I don't know what that's supposed to be, and I don't think they do either. Back to Troy already, and she's with Janet again because I guess she has therapy every single day. Anyway, Janet says she woke up a new woman. She's strong and doesn't hold anything back now because she cried for 2 hours last night. I guess that's how that works.
Can I share something important with you?
Of course.
I've temporarily lost my empathic sense.
I'm so sorry.
I feel before we continue, it's important that you know that.
So Troy has to operate like a normal human counselor. Data tells us that those particles we saw earlier exist only in 2 dimensions, and this could be a tough concept. The best way I can explain it is something that's in 2 dimensions wouldn't be able to perceive us in our 3, much like we can't perceive the 4th dimension. Data does a graphic thing here, but I'm not sure how much that helps. Anyway, Data thinks these 2D things are alive.
How do we get out of it?
Best idea for now is to try a controlled overload of the warp drive. Jump directly to warp 6. The laws of a 3-dimensional universe say it should work. Don't know about a 2-dimensional universe, though.
Yeah, Geordi, I don't either. He says, it's a shame we can't tell if these things are sentient, and Troy takes this personally and gets all pissy and storms off to go see Bev. Deanna's all like, yo, I can't do my job. And Bev says, well, there's nothing I can do for you. And Deanna says, well, oh my God, how do you people live like this? And Bev says, well, just fine, thanks.
If our positions were reversed, I wouldn't have been in here treating skinned elbows while you were lying passed out on your office floor. I'd have been there a lot sooner, perhaps in time, to prevent this from ever happening.
It may seem like Troy's kind of overreacting here, but Marina is doing a really good job at this because it's impossible to explain to someone else how she feels, and she probably feels super alone right now. So she goes to see the captain and resigns as ship's counselor, and Picard's like, "Ugh, if I had hair, I'd pull it out."
I've been fortunate to have access to your Betazoid abilities. Most starship captains have to be content with a human counselor. Empathic awareness is not a requirement of your position.
Troy says, "Look, I'm disabled and I can't do my job." Picard says, "Well, I knew this professor at the academy who was in a wheelchair," and she stops him right there and says, "Yeah, just accept my resignation." Riker stops by and she starts crying and says, "I don't know what to do. All the people around me seem like surfaces without depth." Kind of like the two-dimensional particle beings. Very clever. Riker says, "Hey, I'm here and I'm real."
No, you're not. You're a projection. You have no idea how frightening it is without sensing you, without sharing your feelings.
Riker's like, "Haha, you're upset because you don't have an advantage anymore." And she's like, "What?" But fortunately, Geordi chimes in and we get to go do something else. They try the go to Warp 6 plan and that doesn't work. And Geordi says something about torsional wake and gravitons. That's what's pulling the Enterprise.
During our attempt to break away, I recorded a momentary alteration in the movement pattern within the cluster.
You think we got their attention, Data?
Perhaps, but just for an instant. The pattern immediately returned to its previous dynamic.
Picard says maybe these movements are an attempt to communicate, and Data says, "Okay, I'm on it." Now we're in 10 forward with Guinan, and she tells Troy that she's going to apply for the job of ship's counselor. And Troy's like, "Well, it's a tough job. I put a lot of work into it." And Guinan says, "Well, yeah, I can do that." At first, Troy's like, "Well, what are you talking about?" But then she figures out that Guinan isn't serious.
I get it. You're trying to make me see that I have other abilities to draw on. Human intuition, instincts. It's not that easy.
Data's detecting something again, and hey, look, it's a fragment of a cosmic string, only 107 kilometers long, and fortunately, Riker says that these things are as wide as a proton, but have the gravity of a black hole, which is pretty spot on. He doesn't say that these things are one-dimensional, and if I remember correctly, they call it a fragment because these things are thought to be light years long, and that would be kind of difficult to depict on this show.
Two-dimensional beings seem to be caught in the gravitational pull of the string. Their course is taking them directly toward it.
And us right along with it.
If you are wondering how a three-dimensional Enterprise is being affected by two-dimensional beings that are being affected by a one-dimensional phenomenon, I have no idea.
What began as a curious inconvenience has turned into a serious threat. At current speed, the two-dimensional beings and the Enterprise will be drawn into the cosmic string fragment in 7 hours.
Well, that's not good. Data says the two-dimensional things don't seem aware of the cosmic string's gravity, and Worf wants to shoot at them, but how would that work? I don't know, but Geordi says blowing up some photon torpedoes might make them change course. Well, that didn't do anything because of course not. And they try again with no luck, and back to Troy, and hey, there's Janet, and Troy says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I quit being counselor."
You were right about me. You made me realize I was doing exactly the same thing to myself as I was before. Maybe you couldn't sense what I was feeling, but you helped.
Picard tells Troy they're all going to die if they can't communicate with the 2D guys, and of course she's like, "Well, no, I can't help without my powers." But Picard says, "Yes, you can. Go help Data. We need you."
If our speed and course remain unchanged, in 1 hour, the Enterprise will be torn apart by the gravitational forces of the cosmic string fragment.
Troy comes up with the idea that these 2D creatures are behaving instinctually, and they need to figure out what's driving them. Troy says these things are probably heading to the cosmic string like a moth to a flame, and we need to think like two-dimensionally.
Pardon me?
It's reasonable to wonder if a gravitational pull, even as strong as a cosmic string's, would affect them.
Please, continue.
What if they've chosen a course to the cosmic string?
Yeah, that's not exactly the same, but let's go with that. The plan is to project a fake cosmic string away from the real one, and Picard's like, "Well, how do we do that? Well, we can't create that much gravity." And Data says, "Well, not the gravity part. We need to replicate the string's vibration." Okay, and Geordi says, yeah, they vibrate from atomic decay or something. Whatever, they're going to use the deflector dish. Worf says they have 23 minutes, so Geordi better get to it.
3 minutes to impact.
Status.
The cluster is unaffected. Same course, same speed.
Let's try turning up the volume.
So now the plan works, and the two-dimensional things slow down, so the graviton wake thing dissipates, and the Enterprise breaks loose. And then all of a sudden, Troy gets her powers back somehow, and then says the 2D things are at home in the cosmic string. What?
Such overwhelming intensity of emotion. When we first encountered them, it must have been more than my senses could process.
A short circuit.
Beverly.
Apology accepted. Therapists are always the worst patients.
Troy says, oh, I was so mean to Bev, and Guinan says, nah, you were just being human. Is your job still open? And nope, Troy's back to being the counselor again.
Welcome to the human race.
By the way, the next time you call me aristocratic,
that aristocratic comment was from a scene I cut out where Riker was kind of mean to Troy to get her to face her situation. The producers really like this episode, and it's nice that Troy gets the story all to herself. From what I've read, many people with disabilities liked the way this played out and could identify with Troy's situation. I think that's great, and I can certainly understand where Troy was coming from. However, I had no idea what's going on. Unless I missed something, two-dimensional beings overloaded Troy's senses with emotion at the beginning, and that's why she lost her powers. The doc said she suffered actual cell damage in her brain. And then we skip to the end, and the 2D beings are at home in a one-dimensional cosmic string, and how does that work? I don't know. But at the exact same time, Troy's brain healed itself, I guess, and she gets her powers back. None of that makes any sense to me. I liked how the B story was an allegory of what was going on in the A story, and I think it's pretty cool that they mentioned cosmic strings because they were only first hypothesized in the 1970s. I don't watch this one for fun, but if you do, that's cool. I'm going 3 deltas out of 5. You can let me know how you feel about that. If you like that video, thank you. Hit the buttons and subscribe if you want. There's more Star Trek videos and related content on my website. Check it out at kellyplanet.com. I'm Eric Kelly. Live long and prosper.